Let's make barbecue ribs, but vegan. Okay, to get started, we're going to be using green jackfruit. Now, this is what it looks like in the can, okay? It's green jackfruit in brine. These have been rinsed, drained, and it's the whole thing. You might recall, we have a similar recipe to this already on this channel, but this one's a little bit easier because I use a food processor. And I'm just going to dump all that jackfruit right into the food processor. Slap on the lid. And we're going to pulse it. We want it to still be in chunks, but we want to pulse it. Okay, so I just want it to be kind of like flaked up. See that texture? That's what we're looking for. So I'm going to take that jackfruit and put it into a bowl. By the way, you also want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit because this is a baked recipe. Next, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of vital wheat gluten. This is one ingredient that cannot be substituted for this particular recipe. It's actually rather necessary. I have here 1 teaspoon of yeast extract, but you can also use like a mushroom powder or any other umami builder that you really like, or you can just leave it out or use a little bit more garlic powder and onion powder. Speaking of garlic powder and onion powder, I have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast, 1 tablespoon of white wine vinegar, 1/2 teaspoon of sesame oil. This is for flavor. I know it's an oil, but trust me, this seasoning on this is incredible. And I know I didn't mix anything up. Don't worry about it. It all gets kneaded together. It's fine. 1.5 tablespoons of maple syrup, or you can actually use brown sugar if you prefer. We had maple syrup, so I'm using that today. 1 teaspoon of pork bouillon. Now, we get this from the Asian market, but if you don't have it, you can use chicken bouillon or even a beef bouillon if you prefer. 3/4 of a cup of water. I'm going to pour most of that in. I'm probably going to need it all, but I don't like to put all of it in at once. 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke. This happens to be mesquite, but whatever one you like is fine. And 1/2 teaspoon of beetroot powder. This just adds a little bit of an earthiness and some color. I'm just going to mix that together. You'll see strands of the seitan forming right away. The trick is to get everything all mixed together into a nice homogeneous mass. And I do need all the water. At some point, you just got to get in there with your hands. And you notice a lot of the jackfruit seems to fall out. I just kind of jam it back in as best I can. You want to try to keep it all in there, but it's going to come out because it doesn't really hold in place, but it does add a lovely stratification and fiber type of idea to this dish. I don't really need to knead this a lot. I'm kind of mixing it really, because you can mix all the dry first if you really prefer. I just never really bother. I just kind of mix it all together afterwards. Okay, once it gets to this point, this is like a 2-inch high by, let's call that 6 by 8 inch pan. And what I'm going to do is just put a couple of sprays in the bottom of that of canola oil. And then I'm going to grab all that loose and dump it in there. All those loose bits. Don't want to waste any. And then we take our seitan lump and drop it in and start pressing it into all the corners. You want to make sure that this is really nice and tight and in there good. You want to not have any air gaps or anything. I mean, we are making seitan here, so you want to be kind of careful with that. Push it down, press it around. It's pretty pliable, very soft. And now I'm going to cut them into ribs. And for that, I use a very thin knife. Notice how thin this blade is. It's not overly sharp, but it is thin. And I just want to go right down the middle and try to get to the bottom. It takes a little doing. You are cutting through strands of jackfruit and some of that gluten from the seitan. But this is kind of an important step. It helps it cook a little bit better. And then each of these, I'm going to cut into 2 pieces as well. If you don't make perfect cuts yet, it's okay. We're going to be redefining these cuts as we go. But you want to get it close. And then this goes into the oven for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes of baking, here's our ribs. What I want to do is just get that knife in there and go around those cuts one more time. I said we were going to do that. It did expand just a little bit, so some of the cuts get a little bit covered over. This is where it becomes a little bit more important to do this. It gives you better defined rib pieces later. There's no easy way to say that. But this is not done. And then I'm going to go around the outside just to make sure nothing's really sticking. See, like right there, it stuck a little bit. Just want to make sure nothing sticks. I also feel like getting a little bit of air and heat down the sides helps to keep it from sticking, as well as cook a little bit better on the outside than the inside, giving a little bit of a crust. Now the next step is barbecue sauce. I like Sweet Baby Ray's, but whatever one you like is the one you should use. For this, I'm just going to put a couple of squirts right on top. This is just kind of like the start of the sauce, just like that, not too much. And I'm going to just spread it around with a spatula. I want to get it down into those cracks and into the cuts that we made, but keep it off the sides because it'll just burn and stick and won't be good. And this way too, I can clearly see all of my cut lines. And I'll just push a little bit down inside there just to help cook it a little bit more and separate them. Sort of shortens the cooking time, if you will. Okay, now I'm going to put these in the oven for another 30 minutes. I know we did 20 before, but now it's 30. Okay, after 30 minutes, there's our ribs. Doesn't look a whole lot different, but trust me, lots has happened. These are cooked through now pretty much completely. At this point, usually what I'll do is I'll just run a knife through and I'll cover this whole thing and put it in the fridge for several hours to overnight. These will stiffen up and become this lovely, amazing texture. However, because we're actually making a video here, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to take all these out right now and I'm going to finish them up just so you can see what it looks like. So I have a baking tray that I'm just going to hit with a little bit of oil just to keep them from sticking. And then I have my mini teeny tiny spatula here and I'm just going to go around all the edges again, make sure it's all separated. I usually like to try to take them out in twos just because my spatula is about that size. And here we go. I may have been a little hasty in putting them onto the tray because I do need to separate these. And then I'll put them back on the tray. Okay, at this point, what I want to do is add more barbecue sauce. And then just kind of smear it around. Get it all over them. Down the sides is fine. All over. These are barbecue ribs. Need some barbecue sauce. You can put on more if you like. You can put on less if you like. I tend to leave some at the table for dipping when they're all done anyway. So at this point, back into the oven for 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes in the oven. Here's our ribs. Lovely, sticky, barbecue covered ribs. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take some pictures and give you guys a little bit of a video to see at the beginning of this video. So you've already seen it. I just haven't made it yet. Okay, it's time. Here is our rib. Let's just give this a cut. See that tearing action there? That's a good thing. I'm just going to try to split this open a little bit so you can see. Yep. It has the fibrous effect that you get. Let's take a look. There you go. A little bit of a close-up on it. And now, time to take a bite. Okay. It is meaty. It is rich tasting. It's not exactly the same thing as a rib, but oh my God, it's the closest thing you're going to get as a vegan. Put a little bit more barbecue sauce on there, and you got a winner. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on The Bistro.